Hello, I'm Harry Riley. Welcome to Harry's 10-Minute Tales. This is called The Moth in the Bottle. This story is fiction, and resemblance to anyone, living or dead, is coincidental. There were 7 hills, and on the highest of these stood an imposing castle. In this castle in Bavaria lived Baron Franz Glick, with his beautiful young wife and teenage son. The Baron was in love with his wife and couldn't do enough to fulfil her every whim. He also doted on his son, and the 3 lived in the height of luxury with many servants. To the people living in the shadow of these 7 hills, the Baron was a good and kindly lord. He owned them all body and soul. He provided their accommodation and work in the villages, fields and farms. He treated them all with the greatest respect, and kept taxation down to the barest minimum. In short, he was the perfect governor, gracious and kind, until that dreadful day when his wife had a tragic fall while riding her favourite horse. The accident proved fatal, as the lady broke her neck and the horse had to be destroyed. The Baron was beside himself with grief, as his perfect world was instantly shattered. In order to comply with her wishes, he had built a tower adjacent to the castle, from which she could sketch and paint her renowned landscapes. The castle was landlocked and had been built by the good Baron's ancestors centuries ago, enjoying royal patronage. However, since a boy on holiday, Franz Glick had always admired the great lighthouses of Europe that cast their warning light far out to sea as a warning to mariners. When his wife had asked for a separate tower from which to obtain the very best views of their surrounding countryside, he saw this as his opportunity to fulfil his own wish and to build the tower in the shape and style of a lighthouse. And this is exactly what he did, and the happy couple were delighted with the result, as it stood much higher than their castle home. And now his wife was dead, and he couldn't bear to look at the tower. Shortly after the lavish, horse-drawn funeral, a second tragedy was to befall the house of Glick. A poacher was out one night with his shotgun. What he didn't know was that 2 young boys were also passing through the woods. They were very close as he opened fire and missed his target, but hit one of the boys instead, and the victim was none other than young Leopold Glick, son of the Baron. He was killed instantly. The poacher dropped his weapon and fled, but not before the other boy had seen his face and recognised him as one of the local villagers. This double blow was more than the Baron could take. He became bitter and twisted and vowed to have his revenge. The Baron had always been a keen inventor, and the castle was ample testimony to his clever innovations. And now he studied the tower with renewed interest. He had a plan, and he set to work in the top studio. The view from behind the wide panoramic windows showed the surrounding hills in all their glory, and these views were to be key to his creativity. First, he got his builders to change the structure of the domed and leaded roof and to install a plain view glass one instead. He then installed a system of giant silver-coated refractive mirror lenses all around the centre of the room, just as is seen with the lighthouse prisms. He angled them to harness the moonlight and to reflect a powerful beam across to the nearby hills. For his purpose he would be content to have the beam shining onto the hillsides on the clearest moonlit nights. He provided a simple wooden structure for a bed, a table and a chair, and then waited patiently whilst the guilty poacher was brought in chains to the castle. After the man had lain in the deepest dungeon for a night or 2 to ponder his fate, he was hauled up the winding stairs to the lighthouse tower, and then without trial he was thrown in with some food and water, and the trapdoor was sealed. It was now autumn, and the days were getting shorter. For a full week thick clouds totally obscured the moon, and then it came into view shining clear and bright. By this time the poacher in the tower was panicking. He had reached fever pitch, anticipating his fate. He appeared at the great circular windows, frantically waving his arms above his head to attract attention. It was then that he achieved his wish, for his animated, black silhouette was reflected on one of the hillsides in a giant ghostly image of his true size. He was there for all to see in his misery and rage as he tore at his hair and lurched in front of the strengthened glass. His frustration was complete as he realised this was to be his punishment. Like a caged animal in the zoo he thundered about, turning his caged image onto the other hills as he spun around the tower, attracting crowds of curious onlookers. These simple folk stared in fearful wonder at this terrible punishment the Baron had so successfully devised for him. The days and weeks went by, and people came from far and wide to view the strange phenomenon of the prisoner in the tower, praying for the moon to give them a sighting of the moth in the bottle that was already being dubbed one of the 7 wonders of the world. Someone who did more than pray was the priest of the nearby chapel, who shook his head at the Baron's diabolical treatment of one of his parishioners. Sinner or not, he didn't deserve to be treated in such a humiliating manner. It went against all humanity. He besieged his friend the Baron to release the man, or at least to give him a fair trial. But the Baron's heart was turned to stone, and it took several months for the priest to persuade him to relent. Luckily he finally did so, and the moth was released from the bottle, so to speak, and allowed to return home. The Baron himself became a hermit figure, and only ever saw a few servants as they brought in food, and then he went to live in the tower, where he died a broken man. In World War II the castle was completely destroyed by the Allies, but miraculously the tower survived undamaged, and rumour had it that a bomb was seen to make a direct hit on the tower, but was bounced off by the hand of the Baron's ghost. On clear nights the moon is still said to shine a mysterious ghostly image on the 7 Bavarian hills. End.